Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my sensitive friends, and welcome to episode 116, where we are going to talk about kind of falling out of the honeymoon phase. Now, for some of you, this may have happened many years ago, and finding ourselves in what I call disenchantment, which is that place that feels really just less than satisfactory. It can feel really awful, it can feel really unhappy, but it also can feel just like a dullness. And we're going to talk about why we end up there and three foundational tips to help you move beyond it, to get you set up to move beyond it into what I think of as re-enchantment or falling in deeper, more genuine love than ever with your significant other. So buckle up. I'm so excited to bring you this episode. But before we dive in, I have two really important announcements. The first one is my training, my free training that I've been offering for the last couple of weeks called Bring Back the Attraction is going down on Sunday, the 30th of April. The day this podcast right now is being released is Thursday, April 27th. So you have a few days to opt into that free training and watch it and take it. And that really ties into today's episode. It's all about reviving the attraction and then maintaining it, keeping it alive in your marriage for the rest of your lives together. If you missed it, you gotta get access. The direct link for that is in the show notes, or you can head right over to www.lifeisworthloving.com/bring back the attraction. And announcement number 2 is even bigger, better news. The new updated version of Treasured, my marriage coaching program, is open for early enrollment. And it is now, this is important, it is now the only way to work with me going forward. And one of the things, of many things that I love about it, is that it is a hybrid program, meaning that you get the benefits when you join of both the group work and optionally one-on-one private work with me. So in other words, it is now the doorway into working with me. So if you want one-on-one, you've got to start with Treasured. If you want partner work, you've got to start with Treasured. Treasured is truly the best of both worlds of that group, the group benefits, which are so tremendous. And I'm actually going to share a little bonus episode, so look for that soon, of how this experience, the group experience, was and how beneficial it was from words directly from my client's mouth. So you'll hear them soon. So look for that if you're curious, like, what's this group benefit thing? But then you also have the option to work deeply in one-on-one sessions with me from there. So totally best of both worlds. And right now there is a super early bird discount, again, until Sunday, the 30th at midnight Eastern time, where you'll save $500, which is a large percentage of the total cost of the program. And one of the things I love about Treasured is you get all my deepest teachings and coaching and the access to me, but it's more affordable than my old one-on-one packages. And you get so much more with it. I can't tell you everything right now on this podcast. You've got to check it out for yourself. So if you want your marriage to feel alive with love and ease and connection and fun and attraction, again, you've got to join us in Treasured. Check out the description page. The link to that page is in the show notes, or you can head right over to www.lifeisworthloving.com/treasured. And before we dive into this podcast episode today, I want you to hear my client, Sonia, who just finished up with this last round of Treasured, what she had to say to any of you who are considering it but aren't yet so sure or are hesitating for one reason or another joining Treasured.
Don't hesitate. Don't, not one tiny bit. If you are struggling in your marriage, if it is not the marriage you hoped it would be, don't hesitate. You have zero to lose and absolutely so much to gain. Your investment, your monetary investment, your time investment, it will be so worth it. I have a lot of experience with investing my money and time, and I can tell you this was one of the best, if not the best, investment of both that I have ever made. Do you would not just be doing this for yourself, you are doing it for your marriage, you're doing it for your husband, you're doing it for your spouse, and you're doing it for your future as well. You will reap the benefits of this learning and this coaching for months and years down the road. It is an investment that will pay high dividends for you. So if you are anywhere in the fence, don't be, just go do it. Go do it.
I have to say, I could not agree more. Go do it. All right, let's dive in to today and where you are now. Here you are, feeling a little or a lot disenchanted in your marriage, which feels like kind of a fading of love, a sort of falling out of love. Or maybe you're not there yet. Maybe things are pretty good with your honey, but you worry that the love may fade, or you just feel a bit less happy than you used to. If so, congratulations for being so proactive, because let's face it, we look around us and the rule, not the exception, is after some months or years of marital bliss, if you're lucky, relationships lose that special something, that shine, that joy, that adoration of each other, that kind of captivation by each other, or captivation in each other, whatever. That sense of them being a total treasure in your life, yeah? But they don't lose all of this because they have to. It's not inevitable, and I'm going to tell you more on that soon, of course. But it is painfully common. So I'm sure many of you can relate to some degree. As you might know, I call this time disenchantment, because that's what it feels like. It feels like you're disenchanted, like that enchantment that you used to feel has worn off. And it really does feel especially rough on the heels of that earlier honeymoon phase, which I've called infatuation in the past. You've heard me say that probably. But I actually think a better name for it is blind love. Because in that honeymoon phase, we feel all these exceedingly sweet, lovey-dovey, passionate feelings before we fully know this person in our lives. Before we've seen who they are, like in conflict on a stressful day, while raising kids with bills and living together and sickness and over time, right? Which is when and how the fullness of who we really are, all of who we are, gets revealed. In those early days, most of us are putting on like our better face, right? We're sort of being the best of who we are. Our partner is, we are. And although we might know a lot of who our partner is, we don't see the fullness of who they are until we spend a fair amount of time with them. So when we first fall in love, and even for some months or years, we love someone who we don't fully know. We love more what we think they are, what we hope they are, the parts of them that they've allowed us to see, which again, at first is most often only their best parts. And if you want to hear more about this, like more in depth on this, check out episode 76, The 3 Phases to Mature Lasting Love. And I'm kind of thinking of this podcast episode today as a part 2 on that. Now, what happens in almost all of our modern relationships, it's really kind of an epidemic, honestly, in our culture, is that we inevitably, slowly, or sometimes abruptly, depending, wake up from the spell of that blind love, of that early love. And we find ourselves disenchanted. We start feeling more dissatisfied than in love. And that can feel so disappointing. So you will know that you are here if something feels lacking in your marriage, if you feel this sort of falling out of love, or if you feel irritated, disconnected, prickly, easily hurt, or less loved and valued than you want to in your relationship. If you feel like resentments are cropping up here and there, if you feel like communication between you is like leading to discord and tension and distance, or maybe you're fighting a lot, or your communication just lacks this ease or interest or lightness or sort of vitality that it used to have. Or you even have thoughts that you married the wrong person, or thoughts of leaving, or maybe you have some thoughts that the reason that things are so hard are you, like in you being so sensitive, right? Or maybe you worry that something's innately wrong with yourself or your spouse, or with just you as a couple. When you're in this place of disenchantment, fun and lightness and passion and really genuine interest in each other feel like distant memories, or you kind of feel an ache for more of that, or an ache for those earlier days, right? Or maybe you just feel a dullness. You feel kind of stuck and discouraged, and like things between you will always be this way, and you really don't know how to be happy again in your relationship. If this sounds similar to your experience, I would say you're definitely in disenchantment. But there is good news here. Staying in disenchantment is not inevitable. In fact, seeing that you are here, that you are in this place of disenchantment, can actually open the door to moving beyond this phase into a much better place of much more love and connection and laughter and even passion. So really acknowledge to yourself, admit it if you feel like you are here in disenchantment. That's the first step to moving beyond it. And the other good news is that it isn't your partner personally, or you personally, or your sensitivity that is leading to this disenchantment. It's not. It's really not innate in who you are or who your partner is. Okay, let's be real. There are a few bad apples in the world, for sure. But the majority of you who are listening today are married or in a relationship with pretty good people, right? And are good people yourselves. And so for the vast majority of couples, this disenchantment is not innate to who either of you are, or the pairing of you, the combination of you. The problem isn't you or your spouse or the combination of you together. That's where so many of us go wrong. We think it's us or him or the combo of us. But that's not the problem. The problem is conditioning that we've inherited and our human brain's natural biases, which, our human brain is naturally by default more interested in survival than thriving. So let me break this down into 3 categories. The disenchantment we fall into is simply because of 3 prime things. Number 1, old conditioning, which I'll talk about more in a minute. Number 2, a lack of knowledge on how to guide our brains. Instead of letting their default biases and sort of ways be in charge. And 3, our unguided, uneducated sensitivity, meaning not knowing how to honor and work with your sensitive mind, body, heart system. So in other words, education is the problem. Knowledge is the problem. Developing skills from that knowledge is the problem, right? We don't have the education, or we really have been taught some really wrong things and not taught some really essential things to stay in love, to make our marriages get better and more close and supportive and connected over time instead of less. So let's talk about these 3 things that are keeping us disenchanted, or that allowed us to get disenchanted in the first place. Let's talk about these in more depth. A huge amount of the reason we fall into disenchantment is, like I said, conditioning and old approaches to relating and trying to get what you want in a relationship that were passed down to you from society, from family, and really previous generations. Simply by living in our culture all of us have inherited so many messages and approaches to intimate relationships that actually make it harder to have a truly lasting love in our marriages. Messages that are actually just plain wrong. Messages that go against having a long-lasting love. We've been fed ideas about and approaches to love that keep us only loving what's easy to love, the best qualities in our partner and ourselves, and sadly, really bothered by the rest of who they are and you yourself turned out to be. And this really leads to so much disconnection and unhappiness between you and your partner. It's making us miserable in our modern marriages, right? Because we aren't able to love and feel loved by the person we most want that with. So it's conditioning. And it's playing out currently in our marriages. And it's keeping us out of our hearts. And it's actually making having a great marriage harder. Then you combine that conditioning, all that stuff, with not knowing how to work with and guide our default lizard brain tendencies, which, if you recall, is the natural innate tendency of our human brains to focus on what's wrong and missing, just in general, right? But it gets directed at our partner and ourselves when it comes to intimate relationships. I call this flaw sight. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know what I'm talking about. But it really just means seeing what's bad and wrong in both others and ourselves and just in general. And overlooking all that is good and wonderful in ourselves and others. And not knowing how to break out of the patterning from our innate defense mechanisms. So I still think of this as lizard brain stuff. So it's like not knowing how to break out of that like gripping old patterning and that kind of protective primal part of us that is more interested in surviving, literally living, than having a good life. And that just leads to all sorts of what I call defense mechanisms that actually really end up creating conflict and lots of unnecessary suffering in our intimate relationships. So that's something that a lot of you don't know how to break out of because you don't know how to work with and guide your own brain. And then add to that living as a highly sensitive person without the knowledge of how to guide your very sensitive system, nervous system, mind, body, heart system, in a very non-sensitive society and modern lifestyle that really just was not built for HSPs. So of course, right, you add that into the mix, and of course you fall into disenchantment. It's a perfect recipe for it. So as I always love to remind you, if you find yourself here, I invite you to have a lot of compassion for yourself because really it was not your fault. We are truly up against some challenges when it comes to having really great marriages. And really my main point today is that disenchantment is so common and sadly normal. But it is not inevitable. You can get out of it and you can inspire your partner out of it too. Luckily, and I'm going to share more on this next week, you can re-enchant your marriage, as I like to call it, with love and aliveness and ease and laughter and connection and attraction and all the good things. You can get to the place that I call real enchantment, which is not a phase, but an ongoing experience of deeper, more genuine love than ever. You can get to this place where you know real, deep love of this person you've chosen as your life partner. A love of all of who they are, even what's not so easy to love, flaws, quirks, right? Even with the areas that your partner has growing to do. A place where there is such safety and a deep, genuine foundation of love and security that lightness and playfulness just come easily. You can get there. But what does it take to get there? I bet you are wondering. It takes freeing yourself from what keeps you from love. Unlearning the approaches that keep you from real love. It takes unwinding the old toxic relational conditioning that you've inherited. And it takes learning what does work to deepen and maintain a vibrant love in your marriage as a highly sensitive person. This, of course, is what my program Treasured is for. So definitely join if you want to get out of disenchantment. And we will dive into a little bit more depth on this in an upcoming episode. We're going to outline some of what it takes to get there and also talk about what it's like really when we are there, when we do get there. But right now, I want to let you know that highly sensitive women are the best equipped to do this, to take your marriage from disenchantment to re-enchantment or real enchantment. I really think it's important that you know this. One of the beauties of sensitivity is how much it allows us to love, to want real, genuine, deep connection. How much it allows us to be oriented towards relationship. Right? That's a pretty innate part of being a highly sensitive woman, which means that we have the basic essentials needed. The motivation, the deep desire, the fuel, in other words, to create the kind of love we really want and thrive in. We are also especially gifted in relationship when we have some basic skills. And I know that as a sensitive person, it can sometimes feel like the opposite, that you might not feel gifted in relationships, or at least in intimate relationships. And this actually, ironically, can be true when we don't know how to honor and work with our sensitivity, with our sensitive systems, with our sensitive brain. But when we do the work, when we learn how to relate to our sensitive selves in an empowered, sensitive way, we really do put ourselves in the very best position to be so gifted at creating the kind of relationships we thrive in. So I really wanted you to keep that in mind. Which brings me to the 3 other tips that I really want to highlight right now to set you up, to prepare you to be best equipped to move your marriage from disenchantment into that place of real, lasting love, real enchantment. So the first tip to set you up for this is you've got to believe it is possible to get there. This can be hard if you've had years of unhappiness in your marriage. For me, it's pretty easy to know this is possible because I see it around me all the time. I watch and support, obviously, so many women to create this in their own lives. So I know it's possible. But I do know that it helps to have evidence. Like if it feels, I don't know if that's possible for me, right? It really does help to have evidence. So I want to give you some evidence. So in next week's episode, you're going to hear from my client, Luann, who was in a phase of disenchantment and who did make her marriage one where she feels real enchanted again. So stay tuned for that fun episode. But to give you some evidence today, I'm going to share a few things from clients. One of my favorite things is hearing from clients I'd worked with when they had been in a committed relationship but not yet married, and really not sure if they would be able to marry this person because the honeymoon phase did feel like it was kind of over and all these hard things were cropping up. And then I hear from them a little while after our coaching has ended about how they're engaged and they're planning their wedding. Or I get invitations to their wedding, or I get these beautiful photos of their engagement or of their wedding. It's just the best and melts my heart. Just the other day, my client Kim emailed me out of the blue to share with me the most beautiful engagement photos of her and her honey. And she told me how she's so happy to say that they're currently planning their wedding and that it wouldn't have been possible without my help. Kim is an amazing example of having a really rough time in her relationship and truly turning everything around. You can hear her story and how she did that in my episode, I think it's 88. It's The Power of Self-Love to Heal a Hurting Relationship, Kim's story. And you can now add to that, if you do go back and listen, that they have pulled through and they're happy and they're planning their wedding and things have changed in the best ways for them. So fun. And I want to share another piece of evidence for you that this is completely possible from my client, Rocky, who just finished up with us in this last round of Treasured, she said, before Treasured, I felt a lot of discouragement and anger and frustration and sadness about my relationship. I was feeling like this relationship isn't going to work because he's so insensitive, or he won't do what I think he should do, and he makes me feel bad. I really wasn't accepting him or myself. This was resulting in a lot of conflict. After Treasured, I feel more hopefulness and more pleasure and enjoyment from the parts of my life not in my relationship, and also the parts in my relationship. I definitely laugh more with my partner and feel like we have more fun, and I also feel more love and appreciation. I also feel more pride, because I feel pride when I know that I'm acting in a way that's also making the relationship feel better and my husband feel better. And just one more quote to share from another client. She said, things are now really, really good with my partner, better than ever. We've been showing each other so much love and tenderness, and things just feel so much easier and lighter. So these are just a few of many examples, many. And if you want to see more, which is good to inspire you to help you know that this is possible, because these people aren't just special unicorns. These women dove in and did the work. And this is the result. You can see more of these types of stories and examples over on the Treasured description page. There are lots of them there. So again, you can go to www.lifeisworthloving.com/treasured. And one more little tidbit here is the reason I'm so encouraging you to do this is because our brains, the way our brains work, is they like evidence. It's hard for us to believe things are possible when we don't have evidence for it. It's easier for our brains to believe it's possible for us when we see that it is possible, when we have evidence. And key here, if you don't believe it's possible, it won't be possible for you. Because when we don't believe it, we don't get into action. We don't have the fuel, the determination, the commitment, the energy to make it happen. Which brings me to the second tip that I want you to take away today to get set up to move your marriage from disenchantment to a deeper love, more genuine love than ever. And that is, you've got to be proactive. Understand that moving your marriage into this place is not a passive process. You've got to do something about it if you want to move beyond it. I know that might sound really obvious, but one of the things that I see, actually, this is one of those cultural messages that's so toxic to our relationships, is that we shouldn't have to work for it. We shouldn't have to be proactive. It should just happen. Like if love is good and right, it should just happen. That's not how it works, right? You know that saying, change nothing, nothing changes, right? So not doing anything different than you're doing is a choice to stay the same. That's the hard truth. And just hoping things will change is what I call passive hope. Or we could even call it toxic hope, because it will leave you always just hoping and not actually changing, at least not for the better, right? Like things are most likely, if you're just passively hoping things will get better, most likely things are going to get worse. I mean, that's part of what got us where we are in the first place in this disenchantment. So what we need is what I think of as active hope, which means deciding you will do something about it, even if you don't know the what and the how. Deciding you will learn the what and the how. Because the kind of relationships we want as modern women simply require learning that we did not get by osmosis. These kinds of relationships don't come by themselves. Like anything worth its salt in life, we've got to proactively put ourselves into it to stretch and grow and create the kind of evolved, mature love that we want. So you got to be proactive. And the third tip to set you up to move into re-enchantment is along the same lines, which is that you've got to decide to step into empowerment around it instead of sort of victim mentality. Instead of focusing on where things are going wrong in your relationship, and especially instead of focusing on what your partner's doing wrong or what the problems or issues he's contributing to your dynamic are, which I have to tell you is truly a dead-end trap. Guaranteed. So instead of doing that, you've got to be willing to see where you have learning and growing to do, and be willing to learn how to harness your power of influence towards a more vibrant love. The truth is, in our modern world with social media and all the things, victim mentality is a true common thing. Like, it's actually promoted by a lot of influencers and things out there. So it's really easy to fall into. And I want to just say a word or two about what it is. It's victim mentality is this mindset that's like, it's all happening to me, or my partner is doing it to me. Or like the world and your partner is the reason you're unhappy. And it's characterized by blame, by feeling powerless, by feeling helpless, by feeling hopeless, by feeling angry, by pointing fingers. And if you tend to be like, it's not fair. Why should I have to do all the work in a relationship? He needs to do the work too. That's also a sign that there's some victim mentality here. And I want to say, again, it's super common to have victim mentality. I think aside from it coming from our culture, it's also a tendency, it's a kind of easy place to go having a human brain. So this is not something to feel ashamed about. I think we honestly all fall here. I sometimes still go here. Very normal and natural. But it's really not helpful, because really overall this victim mentality leads to this sense of there's nothing you can do. And with this mindset, there is nothing you can do, because it's giving all your power away. It's giving your significant other all your power. It's giving everything outside of you power and absolving you of any power. So instead of that, to really move into real enchantment, you've got to decide to explore the possibility that you are the one to lead the change in your marriage. Because the truth is, you want it. You're best suited for it. And you are, in fact, as a sensitive woman, designed to create it. There's no one but you who has the capacity in the relationship to be the initiating force of change. Unless your partner's already doing that, then great. Then you can go do it together. But a lot of times that's not the case. And yes, it will take unlearning the old patterning and learning new approaches and skills. But you know how to learn. You can do it. That's empowerment, right? I can do it. I'm going to figure out how. I got this. I'm going to find my resources. I'm going to make it happen. And so I want to know for you, how would that be to really approach your marriage from there? I know, because I've seen women do this, you would be so much more motivated and powerful in your capacity to create the change you want. My clients don't honestly always come with a ton of this empowerment. They oftentimes come with just a willingness to try on this empowerment, to explore it. And it's from there that they're able to step fully into it with my support. And that's when they're truly able to create the immense, loving changes in their marriage that they want. That's why you hear such amazing stories and testimonials from them, from my clients, right? I help them harness their power, but they are the ones who step into it and use it, and it changes everything. And you truly can do the same. You've got to do the same if you want to move out of disenchantment and into real enchantment, a deeper, more genuine love than ever with your honey. So let me repeat these tips again to get you set up to move into this place of better love than ever. You've got to believe it's possible. You've got to be proactive. You've got to decide to step into empowerment, into your power to change things. This is going to set you up to learn and develop the skills to make your marriage re-enchanted for the long haul. If this makes sense to you and you already believe that it's possible, or are ready to be proactive and are already stepping into empowerment, or you just want to step into all of these and you want to enliven the quality of connection and love and sense of nourishing support in your marriage and really move into this real enchantment that I've been talking about, you've got to join me in Treasured. People are enrolling now, and it's first come, first serve, so join us. And remember, if you join us by Sunday at midnight Eastern Time, you get $500 off. You've got to go learn all about it. And I have to say, that the description page, the updated description page of Treasured is in and of itself an amazing learning experience. So even if you don't think you want to join Treasured and you just want to learn more about what's keeping you from this place of real enchantment, what's keeping you stuck in disenchantment, and what it takes to move beyond it and into a lasting love that you feel so good in your marriage, you've got to go check out the Treasured description page. Again, that's www.lifeisworthloving.com/treasured. And for those of you who are considering joining or already know you're going to join, I am so excited for you and I can't wait to support you in moving out of disenchantment and into a deep and vibrant love that lasts for the long haul in your marriage. Be oh so well, my sensitive friend.